Hello again, universe. Okay, this is Everything is Equilibria part 2. This is quite interesting to me, this one. So it's an update to the last video. And I've just had this thought that I left the last video a little bit open in terms of what is the point on even thinking about what I was saying. What is the purpose? Is it just pointless meandering around ideas? But it just dawned on me there that it all came together. So why would it be relevant that everything is equilibrium? Well, I think, in short, it could enable us to predict the future. In the future. This is not something that I've heard anywhere before or is relevant to today's discussion. But I think that in the future, this will enable us to predict the future. Just like a mathematical equation. Now let me explain, because these ideas are quite complex and you can't just summarize them like that. Right, if everything is equilibria, then if something's on a certain wave, in other words, if a wave goes down, then it's due to come up proportionately in the next cycle. So if everything is equilibria, if we start to be able to see where the current equilibria is, we will know where it's going to tend towards next. And it'll be directly proportionate. Just like a wave, or just like a mathematical equation. It will be predictable and follow the rules exactly. So, one problem is, outcomes in life that we understand and events are subject to influence by multiple equilibria at the same time. Maybe thousands, hundreds of thousands. This is not something that's very simple. So any outcome could be subject to hundreds of, or thousands, or tens of equilibria. So if we were to measure the equilibria to try and predict the future, this wouldn't just be a case of, oh, the wind blew left last week, so this week it's going to blow right. Or, it's going to be like a complex computerized equation with possibly multiple equilibria being considered and sort of juxtaposed at the top of each other to give a mutual relationship to the outcome we're trying to predict, enough that we can confidently predict the outcome. So with this, how would we ever be able to do that? Well, for me, it may be like a trial and error sort of AI algorithm learning process where you learn to monitor certain equilibria, and you put them into the computer so it starts to be able to see that wave, sort of see where it's going to go. And then let's say you put 10 different equilibria in, related to a certain outcome that you're trying to predict. So let's say, for example, Johnny has 3 days off a year and you want to try and predict what day off he's going to have next year to the date. You stick a load of equilibria in, like when he was ill last, what the traffic was like on the road last, and all this type of stuff. What the traffic was like the last time he was off, and was it that what caused him to be late? There could be hundreds of these different things. And then you attempt to predict when he is going to be late next, or when he's going to be off work next. And then if you're wrong, you know that it wasn't the correct equilibria that you were studying, or it wasn't enough. So then you kind of put more in and learn. And eventually, this sounds inconceivable now, but imagine there's a computer that's constantly learning, applying possible algorithms or even AI in the future, and it learns how to monitor these equilibria, trial different sets of equilibria to predict a certain outcome, and then eventually it hits on a result. So it somehow says, now we've got to the point where we've got 3,000 equilibria that we can measure, we are monitoring them, and then we can try to predict what day Johnny's going to be off work next year. Imagine how it works, and then boom, Johnny was off work on the day that the computer said. You could then, by trial and error, state that computer may have learned how to predict that. And then you try it again and learn again, and if it gets it wrong, you change something again. But eventually, you can see where I'm getting to, this could get to a point where these basically computerized calculations can predict what is going to happen by just simply sort of understanding that everything is equilibrium. So if we can monitor a snapshot of the equilibrium where things are at the moment and the multiple equilibria that affect something, we could, like you monitor a waveform, you know, we could then say it's going down there, so next it's going to go there. And you could predict the future and outcomes. Now that is insane. That would be a futuristic development beyond anyone's imagination, that we can just map out the future according to computerized calculations. And I mean, I don't know where that takes humanity if that happens. I mean, we'll just be sat there saying, right, okay, we know what's going to happen. It'll be strange, but even if this isn't like developed to the point where we can predict everything, you may be able to predict certain things, like, you know, that would be useful for science or preservation or enhancement of things. So this definitely could be used, this idea, in the future, but it's way beyond anything that's relevant now. So yeah, that's what I've summarized in my head as to why this is even relevant, because maybe you could even try it in your life. Like, if you've had a few bad days, you think, right, maybe I'm due a good day, monitor the frequency of how often, when it happens, and why it happens on a certain time and not others, and you might be able to learn how it's flowing and start to be able to influence the next flow, or even just have the peace of mind to have patience and understanding to see through the next cycle. But yeah, I hope that's interesting to the 3 people that might ever watch it. This is more of a journal for me to log things that I've conclusions I've came to in my thinking. So I think there was one thing I was going to say, but I forgot it. It was relating to equilibrium, and obviously if I think of it, I'll put it on later. But thanks for listening.